Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Be Live. And today I have a very special guest, good friend of mine, an Emmy-winning cinematographer, Mr. Logan Fulton. How you doing, sir?
Hey, how's it going, Harry? It's good to see you, and thanks for having me on your show. And it's gonna be a fun
Awesome.
chat.
Yeah. So, for those who don't know, me and Logan go pretty far back. He gave me one of my earlier career roles in some of his films. So we have a couple of films that we worked on, but today we're going to pick Logan's mind about his cinematography history, just being in the entertainment industry, and then mainly importantly, he just won an Emmy. So we're going to talk to him about some things he's working on in the past, certain things that he's working on in the present, and then what does he plan on doing in the future. So just like our typical show, we're going to ask Logan about 5 questions of his personal life, his professional life, and then we're going to have some contact information at the end. Okay.
Awesome, let's
So
do
we're
it.
going to start off first for the audience that they don't know. Where'd you grow up, Logan? How'd you grow up and where'd you grow up?
So Harry and I we actually go like about as far back as it goes for my filmmaking career. So I grew up in southwestern Connecticut,
There you go.
about an hour away from New York City,
Hmm.
and so I'm an East Coaster, and then I moved to LA in 2013.
Okay.
So
Was it a
about
big jump?
12,
Like, was
12
it a
years ago.
big difference with like Connecticut life to LA life?
Definitely, definitely, because culturally very different places. I think like I think things move very fast on the East Coast.
Hmm.
Not to say that things don't move fast here in LA, but the vibe is different in
Okay.
that regard. Like I feel like people on the East Coast are very go go go, and things in California are a little more laid back, a little slower.
Hmm.
Um,
They always say like
and
on the East Coast, people, what does it say? They live to work, and then on the West Coast they work to live. So it's like
yeah,
complete
no, I would consider
opposite.
that pretty accurate. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like they kind of like on the West Coast you work, you get your little, you get your paycheck, and then you get out and you actually live. You get the weather, you get the scenery, you got the water. So it's a little bit different. In the East Coast, it's like people running around. I gotta get a paycheck. I gotta get a job. So it's a lot different.
No,
Um,
I mean, I definitely miss I miss the fall. I miss the seasons out there for
yeah, yeah, yeah,
sure.
yeah. Hmm.
And I think the New England's like a pretty nice place to live, a nice place to shoot. Um,
Okay.
but you can't beat that California weather.
Yeah.
It's December 8th, and I'm wearing a t-shirt here
There you
talking to
go.
you.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's
I'm in the
72
basement
and
and I
sunny
got
out there.
I go to work. I got a a big bubble vest and coat and all that stuff. So yeah, I don't. I'm not a cold weather person, but I do like fall. Fall is my favorite season. So I don't know if I could move somewhere that it doesn't have it. But I mean, if I were to go, I think like Cali's a nice spot. So you go to high school and you go to Cali. Where'd you go to college?
So I went to Loyola Marymount University out in LA.
You
So
go.
I mean, I guess to give kind of like the full picture of like my like filmmaking journey,
Mm,
I think I started making films like a lot of people. Just like you don't really know what you're doing. You're working with your friends and you're trying to like get things together. And what I found was, my friends and I, we made these like little action movies. No one would watch them,
mm,
but
okay.
if we had attached like some sort of IP to them, like, oh, this is
Hmm.
actually about Call of Duty, or we did one on like The Last of Us
Yep, yep.
together, stuff like that, then suddenly you're making essentially the same films, but you could get the like the manufacturers of the games to retweet them, and you could build your audience, and suddenly these things were racking in like millions of views.
Hmm.
um, so I think it was a pretty exciting time to start filmmaking, because I think at that moment like YouTube was like very new
Very new, yeah.
comparatively.
Yep, yep.
And I think like it hadn't become as like brain rot, like corporatized as it is today.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
there were a lot of people that were doing kind of what I was doing, where it's like they're experimenting with like visual effects, and they're trying to make little short films about things that they cared about.
Hmm.
So there was like a degree of like, I think, like quality without the sort of the clickbait and the
Yeah, yeah.
the pressures and the monetization that
Hmm.
exists
Well, now
today.
because of YouTube, I think YouTube is considered uh, the number one entertainment app or site in the world now because when you like you said when you started, it was YouTube was just coming up. People didn't really use it to like monetize things. It was like more exposure. But now it's like business. It's a
Exactly.
multi-billion dollar company, and it's a huge in terms of streaming, and then social media. It's a huge asset. So I think it's perceived differently in the business aspect of things. So. Yeah.
100%. Because I think at that time, like companies, obviously, I think like Google had probably just bought it around that time, like 2010, 2011, when I started making movies. But it's like I think they weren't quite sure the potential it had in terms of like a money making like stream. Like they were just starting to like provide like ad revenue, like ads on videos and stuff. But like the entire like culture now of like sponsoring things and the engagement algorithm and all that stuff, like it really wasn't worked out. There were a lot less people doing it too, so it was a little bit there's a little less noise in the space to kind of get your stuff seen.
Like now everyone is a content creator. That's
exactly. But how do
you look at that like as from like a professional cinematographer's like perspective on content creation? How do you see it? The good is
I think maybe it's neither good nor bad. Certainly like I want shoots to be well funded and pay me to shoot their stuff, but I think there's something liberating about people being able to make their own content and have their own voice. And like when I first started making movies, that was like really the first like renaissance in terms of being able to have your own voice, because that was right when like the DSLR started coming out. So it's like suddenly the barrier for making films was a lot lower than it was 5-10 years ago, because now it's like we could have a $700 DSLR that we were shooting those movies on versus 10 years before there really weren't any digital options that were any good. So you'd have to shoot film, and film is a tremendous expense, and a much harder technical process. The barrier of entry for that's a lot higher. So I think now you're seeing even like a continuation of that, where it's like, okay, well now you don't even need the DSLR. Like people can shoot on their phones, and all these other kind of cheaper, crazy cameras. There's just so many options for people to make stuff. So I think it just becomes easier and easier, and certainly it's easier now than ever to get that out there as well, especially like certainly short form content and stuff through TikTok and Instagram and various apps. But the trade-off is because everyone's doing it, it's a little bit harder to to get whatever it is you're saying out there, and maybe it's a little less important what you say and more how it's out there.
You see a lot of people more on like the trends of something that's popular to get exposure, where you like we going back to like monetization, using TikTok. You get enough videos, or you do something that's viral, now all of a sudden you have a lot of eyes on your page, so now you're going to get monetization, and then next you're going to get a paycheck, and then it turns into a business. But ultimately you don't have any like creative aspect other than just trying to ride the wave of what's popular, what's not. And I think that's my only like gut feeling of like a cinematographer creator versus a content creator. Content creators, I think they kind of work with what is popular, and then the ones that kind of stand out are the ones that do something that's outside of the box, where you're not particularly looking at them just like everyone else. Like, oh, well, they're doing something different. I have a lot of friends that are in like comedy sketches. I think are really great for like content creation, because it's not a video, it's something short, it makes you laugh, and you go on with the rest of your day, versus like shooting a full film or an episode of something, and you're utilizing that medium or that platform to like showcase your talent, versus like what you're doing. You go to make a movie, or you make a short, or you make a documentary, and it's a compass of different skill sets that are all put in one place, versus like a camera, some lights, and so on. So I give respect to content creators, but I mean, when I'm talking to a Emmy winner for cinematography, and I know your work, so I know you're like super skilled in what you do, I don't think it can be put in the same category. And I think a lot of times with the narrative is like, if you're a content creator, you're a cinematographer, or you're a content creator, you're an actor. And I've seen a lot of backlash with both. So I'd like to pick your mind on that. Like, how does that? How it?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, like I don't think I know if it's neither good nor bad. I think what's interesting about like cinematography in particular, being a director of photography, is you are part of like a much larger team, and you are kind of just like a, you're a cog in the puzzle, so to speak, just in the machine. So, it's like, this is anything you do, it's a combination of, the work of the director, the work of the editor, obviously the work of the actors.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, it's interesting because it's like, in some ways, like, cinematography is a relatively invisible medium. It's not something that, obviously, like, the viewer notices it, and, you can appreciate it. But, when you're listing off your favorite movies, you're thinking about the actors, you're thinking about the directors.
Yep.
So it's interesting from like a, a branding perspective. It's almost like an anti-content creation thing, because it's not really about like promoting yourself. You're trying to like promote like the work, and at the end of the day, it's like you're trying to bring the director's vision to life, and then the stories and stuff like that, rather than anything that you think will promote yourself personally, or move your career along.
I mean, it's an interesting art form, and I respect, because I'm an artist as well. So it's kind of like, I see the world changing in how they value art. And I think it kind of goes like, it's like a wave. Like, for instance, you don't value art until usually you can't get it anymore. So back in the day, if an artist would live in his time, he would create certain things, and it wouldn't be very popular or valuable until they die. So it's like, you can't get it anymore. So now, okay, Picasso or Michelangelo, now these things are valuable. But in all actuality, when you're making film, it's like you're like immortal. Once you make something and it's out there, especially now with the internet, like, your stuff is there forever. Someone can look back and say, how did he get this shot, or what is different from this cinematographer to that cinematographer. I think it's a little bit more in depth when you are like a film person, like someone that actually looks at film and critiques it to a degree. So, I mean, going into that, how do you go from, going to school and you're making your projects, and then all of a sudden I see you and you get an Emmy? I want you to explain this to the rest of the, audience, because a lot of people don't know, when you get an Emmy, that's like the highest award or accolade that you can get for like a film or a show, right?
Yeah. I mean, certainly for like television, yeah.
Television, right? Yep.
Right. Yeah. Because like for a movie, like that would be an Oscar. But yeah, that'd be for a television show, like, obviously they don't qualify for an Oscar. Yeah. No. Obviously, yeah. There's kind of like a big jump in the timeline there, right? And yeah, so when I went to LA, that's when I went to film school out there at Loyola Marymount. And I found that was a really great place to be from a culture standpoint. It was a really collaborative environment, and when I was a freshman and a sophomore there, you kind of learn a little bit more about all the other roles that are on a film set that you hadn't maybe ever seen before. You've got people working in lighting, you got people working in the camera department. And as a freshman and a sophomore there, the kind of the way the culture worked was, you're not directing, you're not shooting anything, when you're that young in the program. So you're helping older students out on, their sets. So you're working as a grip, or you're working as like a second AC, and then maybe your second year you'll start being like the gaffer, or you'll be the first AC and you'll pull focus, and then you're starting to build out your little network there, and then you're trying to meet other people that are doing the same thing, and those directors. So it's like, when it's time to shoot their student film, they know you, and at the same time you're building relationships with your other classmates by it's like, hey, I'm gaffing on your film, so it's like, when it's time for me to make my film, now I can cash in those favors, and I'll have crew to help my projects be successful. But I found that I was doing a lot of work in like the lighting department, and I found it was just like a really interesting technical, challenge, because it hadn't been really something that I had access to when I was making movies myself. It's like, when I was doing stuff in high school and just, with my friends, it's like, mostly it would just be like the available lighting, and, that's kind of what we would roll with. But I found like once you start getting access to like real tools and stuff, you can really start crafting kind of the image and the shape, and I really like the challenge of that. And and I really liked a lot of the DPs that were older students of mine who kind of mentored me. And so I think I kind of naturally started falling into that track, and wasn't something that initially had seen myself doing, but I found that I really enjoyed doing it. So So I
Yeah, I
tried
was
to
going to
shoot as
ask you
many
that.
student films as possible.
Did you go to school initially for cinematography, or did you go for like directing or like filmmaking? What was the like the original major?
Yeah, so at Loyola Marymount, like basically there's only like two tracks. So it would be like a screenwriting track or like a production track.
Okay.
Like since I've graduated, it's become a little more specialized in terms of
Hmm.
like how you can kind of declare yourself. But when I was there, those were kind of the only options. So it's like if you wanted to be anything other than a director, that
Yeah.
that would still fall under the production umbrella. But it was really up to you to be like, well, I want to do this, so I'm gonna explore those options um,
Okay.
and certainly you could take like additional classes and stuff like that. But I mean, I found like really where I learned was working on set, because you really can't learn, stuff from
Yeah.
books or,
Like books and reading.
even
Yeah.
lectures. There's only so much you can learn, or even like, doing work in like a classroom with a camera and stuff. It's a little different than, when you're on set and, the pressure's on and there's, the limitations of, budget and schedule and, all those kind of factors that, kind of define filmmaking.
Do they have
Um,
that when you're in the class? Do they give you like you have a budget, or is it just like you have to make a project? Like, how is the curriculum broken down at that school? Where they say like you have 10,000, you can make it, and you gotta. That's like part of the testing requirements. Like,
Yeah,
how
so,
does
so,
that
so,
work?
so like what's interesting about like say the way the LMU's program worked versus it's a program like USC
Mm-hmm.
would be, so at USC, like USC will pay for the film,
Okay.
but as a result they'll only pick a handful of directors
Mm.
to make films.
Yeah,
What
because
was so
they don't want to
versus
get wasted.
yeah, they're not sending that money away for everyone. It's like only a small group.
Okay.
So it's like you could go to that school and then obviously like amazing filmmakers come out of that program, some of the best in the world, but you could go the entire time and not be able to make a film,
Film,
if your
yeah.
scripts weren't picked. So I think, and then inherently like that culture, it really starts to, if you're like suddenly like, oh, only X number of films we made, it becomes quite competitive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're competing against your classmates, which I feel like is antithetical to building a network. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
there's a very small pond being a film school, right? Like you need to be friends with these people because they're going to get you work later. You don't want to be like enemies with these people because you're competing to shoot, student films or some, petty
Yep.
thing like that. So for me, like what was appealing about LMU is everyone has to make a movie in the
Okay.
production program.
Okay.
And that was great as a cinematographer because that meant there were tons of projects to shoot.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't making 15, 20 films a semester. There's like 150 or whatever.
Nice.
So you're able to get in there and like, really, really shoot a lot of stuff. And that's the only way to get good at anything,
Yeah.
right? Is to
Yeah,
just
you
like do
gotta
it
work.
badly a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
So you were able to kind of make a lot of mistakes and, no one's going to fire you on a student film, for messing
Yeah.
up. So it's like, just to be able to get those reps in was huge.
Mm-hmm.
And that was what I think what was useful at LMU versus like I said, like anything like particularly about the classes and stuff. And then additionally, when I was there, I worked in it was the camera rental department, so that was kind of like my work study job.
Okay.
So I found that was like really useful as well because I could build the cameras and practice with them, in the downtime of my shift, and then I also learned how to prep them and how to repair minor things on them, and so you just started getting a lot of like more working knowledge
Yeah. It's
from the
technical
equipment.
parts.
Yeah, that's kind of that technical stuff because it's like. I think as a DP, it's like the more you can understand about every element of the process,
Yep.
even if you don't per se have to do it on set, is valuable. So it's like to understand, how every piece of the camera works, even though you have assistants who are, helping you with that stuff. It just like, it makes it a little bit easier to, do good work, I think, when you do that. And then also, same with like lighting. It's like, even though there are other people who are physically, doing most of the lighting
Yeah,
for
doing
you,
most
touching
of
the
it,
lights
yeah,
and stuff. But it's like to understand that's like, hey, it's like I've gaffed for several years. Like I understand that
A
if
little
I ask
bit.
for
Yeah.
this,
What you doing? Yeah.
it's gonna, it's gonna be like, hey, this is a lot of work, or
Yeah.
it's like it's like maybe this is not safe, or other things. So it really helps you like kind of dictate, like what's needed and what's important, and stuff like that. So I found that was super valuable. And then I'd found that basically, while I was doing this, I was also trying to get on like as many just like real sets as possible, sets that weren't student films.
Is it
like
hard
a lot
to do
of
that when you're in college, where you still got to take class? Obviously we both know it's time consuming to make a film. It's time consuming to like construct all that and then shoot it and then put it out there. When you were in school, I did, because like I said, I followed your career when you were coming up and you were doing. I saw you on a lot of different sets. You worked with NFL, NBA, a lot of different things, ESPN, things like that. So there was a lot of different marks. Was that more when you were in college, or was it when you were out of college afterwards? Like, how did that?
Yeah, that would have been when I was out of college for the most
Okay.
part. So like when I was, in college, I was more crewing for other productions. So
Okay.
like the older people, when I was a freshman or a sophomore, when I became a junior and senior, they had graduated and they were off shooting, small things. And because I'd worked for them when I was in film school, they knew me, so they're like,
Hey,
oh,
Logan.
we need a grip or a gaffer.
Yep.
So it was like I was doing crew work on, non-student things now. So I would kind of strategically like take as much time off as I could from school, like a day here or there, like how many classes can I miss before I'm in danger of failing, and then you kind of weigh that because I found like doing that work on set was more valuable than
it is.
being in class, and certainly in the non film classes that I had to take. So that's how then you're able to meet more professional connections that way, and then also like as those cinematographers started kind of rising up through the ranks, they didn't want to shoot those jobs anymore. But because I'd been like the gaffer on those projects, they'd be like, hey, like I'm unavailable, but hey, you remember Logan? He gaffed the last 3 of these things. Like he can shoot this, and then boom, now you're in, and now you're shooting. So I kind of was like leapfrogging like that, for a while.
Okay.
And that was kind of how I started gaining like some momentum. And then increasingly as time went on, it was like I was doing less crew work and more shooting work. And this probably took about 2 or 3 years after graduating, just kind of grinding away at that. And then at a certain point, I was doing, it was an ESPN 30 for 30 that I got called for. And I kind of was like, well, I think this is like the moment for me where it's like, I'm going to kind of just step away from crewing. I'm going to shoot this thing. And then after that, like, I'm only going to advertise myself as a cinematographer, and I'm going to kind of just make that, that jump. And try to like, and try to rebrand myself as such.
I think it's always cool when I hear ESPN, because my oldest daughter, she works for ESPN, so I got a little.
Oh yeah, up in Bristol. Yeah, it's a fun Connecticut connection.
Yeah, the Connecticut CT. So I always when I saw that, I started noticing more and more that you were getting, like, at least you were advertising, like you said, you were advertising more that you can shoot these types of things. And I was like, I remember what you could do, and that was already great. Then I saw you working with different cameras, and the quality of stuff obviously was getting better, and the products were getting larger. So kudos to you coming up and doing what you got to do, trying to explain to other artists that it's a hustle, really, right? Like you have to get out there, you have to learn your craft, and that's just part of like the bumps and the bruises, like to build yourself up to where you are now. I mean, that's a blessing as well, because you gotta you value all that when you're going through it. So.
No, definitely. And I mean, like, I think a large part of like the game here in LA and filmmaking and stuff in general is like, you have to just keep surviving here. Because it takes a long time to, feel like you've like made in your career. Like I don't even really feel like I've made it in my career. It's like, there's still bigger, better projects that everyone wants to be shooting. So it's like, you just want to be like, okay, well, like, when I first graduate, the first immediate thing is, how do I pay my bills here so that I can continue to stay in LA, so that, I can continue to shoot, so I can eventually shoot full time. So yeah, no, it's definitely like a hustle culture. And, I think like, especially when you're starting out, doing multiple different roles on set, is helpful initially, because you could be hired to do multiple things from different people. But no, and then doing the ESPN 30 for 30 was a really great experience, because we shot probably 50 or 60 interviews in that, and some of them were with like pretty big talent. It was about Dennis Rodman, so we shot with Dennis Rodman. We shot with like Michael Jordan.
Nice.
And what was great about that as a DP was, that was like a crash course in lighting. It's like I got to, light so many different people's faces, that I learned, through that process, a lot of like tricks. It's like, oh, this person is bald, or, it's like they're going to wear a hat, and most of the, their hairlines recede, like all these kind of different things, their skin color, and like, are they wearing glasses? And just also like kind of seeing the shapes of different people's faces and stuff, and just being able to do that every single day, was a really great experience in terms of like just gaining knowledge and tricks, and how to be more efficient and better. So I think I emerged from that with like a lot more experience than I started.
There you go.
And then I think one thing that's really like most creative things, it's like, once you do something, then you get hired to do kind of that thing again. Because initially, like, no one believes so like, they don't believe in you, so it's like they want to see, especially when you get on like commercial kind of stuff, they're like, they want to see you've done the job like exactly, even though you're like, hey, I could do the job, I haven't done the job, but I could do it, like, they're like, no, we want to see that exact thing.
We don't want that. We want it.
So it's like
that's part of
being
the entertainment, right? That's part of the entertainment.
Definitely.
Industry is like, they're very cutthroat. A lot of people that don't know how that works. It's like, it's either you have it, you don't, and it's not anything. It's no hard feelings. It's just that they don't have time or patience, or just they can't do it because they can't do it. So it's a difficult industry to, like you said, survive in. And when you see someone excelling, it's always like I guess it's like I always root for people when I see it, because I understand that part of it. Like when you love to do that, and the world doesn't really like value artists to a certain degree, until you get to a certain point. Then they're like, oh, I remember, but they don't remember and see all that grinding that you had to get.
No, definitely.
So.
Yeah, and then for me, it's like I did that, and then because I had done that work, I was getting more calls to do more like sports stuff. So I did a television show for the NFL. And then a few other kind of sports related things. And then in 2021, the director that I did the 30 for 30 for, Todd Capostasi, he was producing and directing. It was like a 5-part miniseries for Peacock. It's called Meddling. And that would be the project I ultimately got the Emmy for.
Nice.
So that film was, I said, it was 5 parts, and it was about the 2002 Olympics. The Russian mafia rigged the pairs skating competition.
Wow.
So it's kind of a fun piece where it's like there's a little sports element to it, but there's like some true crime, element. And then Todd directed it, and then his wife, Tara Lipinski, is an American figure skater, gold medalist.
Oh, nice.
So she was very, in tune with that world, and so they were a good team working with, the people at NBC. She had connections there. She commentates for them on the, the figure skating for the Olympics. So she's very well versed in that world, and so we were able to kind of get good access with, the Canadian skaters who ended up getting silver, and then we also able to go to Russia, and we met with the Russian skaters that were involved in that too, and then the coaches, and kind of all these other people that were involved in the story. And it was a great experience. Got to do some traveling. It was great to work.
A lot of places.
Worked in France. I worked in Russia on it. Yeah.
Nice, man.
And so ultimately, then the following year it came out, and then the year after that, 2023. It was a little shocking. I got a text from the director that had been nominated for a sports Emmy. So kind of to get to your point earlier, there are quite a few different like spheres of Emmys.
Break that
because
down.
there's so many different types of projects out there, right? So it's like there's like Emmys for like television shows, dramas, shows, and stuff like that. But it's like, okay, where do things like documentaries fall? So there's other categories for those. So actually, there's more people with Emmys than you think because of that. Because the network is relatively wide. But no, so the ceremony was in May, and it's actually kind of a funny story. Is when I got there, they gave me the wrong seat. So I wasn't sitting with the director. I was sitting
Okay.
like on like the upper deck, like next to this random woman. And her and I were just talking, and then the cinematography category was actually like the third thing that they announced. So it was very early in the process. So I'd only been sitting down for like maybe like 10 minutes, and then it's like, oh, the Emmy goes to meddling, and I'm like, I just look at this woman, I'm like, I just won. And she's like, you better get down there.
Down there.
And I'm like, well, I'm like way up there. So I don't know, it's like a scene from a movie. I'm like running down the stairs, and I'm telling security, I'm like, I gotta get to the stage.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then because I wasn't up there, the director's like texting me. He's like, "Where are you?" And then he went up there to accept it because he was like, I didn't know where I was. He thought maybe I was in the bathroom or something.
Oh man.
But it was great because because he had gone up there and his wife Tara had gone up there too. It was like the three of us were up there, and
I saw
it was great to it was great to share the experience with them. And then after you win the Emmy, they kind of bring you into like a little back room to do like photos. So we're hanging out in there, and then the person who won an Emmy after us was Shaq. So Shaq goes into the room,
Like looking
and
up.
he's talking. Yeah, looking at it. He's like a big guy, and like he was talking to because he knows Tara, and then I guess he'd met Todd previously, and like he remembered them, and they're talking, and he's like, oh, what'd you guys win for? And I guess he'd seen it. And he said something like specific about it, which makes you
so
believe
you knew
like
he wasn't lying.
Yeah, he wasn't just like bullshitting us, being like, oh, yeah, I saw that thing. He's like, I liked it. I was like, so it's just a weird moment, being there with Shaq, and yeah.
I mean, a lot of things with Shaq is he's very intelligent. He's very like into a lot of different industries. He owns
he's
a
a
bunch
very
of
smart
businesses.
business person.
Yeah, it's very cool that not only did he talk about it, but like he said, he was actually seriously like in it, and he valued that piece of art. He's there winning an Emmy himself. So it's like, it goes into saying the same thing. When you're an artist and you value art, it doesn't really matter what level. It's just to see like when someone succeeds in making a project like that, you want to give them their flowers while you can. That's why when I saw that, I was like, man, go ahead, Logan. I see that, man. I see that. I was like, wait, what? I saw the Emmy thing, and I was like, man, I gotta reach out to him. I gotta get his say, because I saw how you grinded from like when you were basically in high school till now. When you were succeeding in that. So that was a beautiful picture. It was a beautiful story to tell too. That's gonna be a nice story to tell other people too. Running down the stairs.
Yeah. No. So yeah. No. It was a real like a fairy tale moment for sure.
So after so you get the Emmy, and then it opens up. We had talked offline about you taking some major trips out of the States to shoot. That's typically part of your job now? Do you feel like you travel more now after that, or was it before it? And then what are you currently like working on now? Like, what's your current projects that you?
I feel like I always traveled quite a bit, and I think that's just because like especially the documentary stuff. It's like that stuff scatters all over the world. But I've been lucky enough to work all over the country, and then also to work in I shot a movie in Costa Rica a few years ago.
Nice.
And then I went to Romania. I've been to Russia. I've been to France a couple of times for work. So it's it's cool to be able to kind of travel, and certainly like after the Emmy, like definitely a lot more of that. But it's interesting because the Emmy is a fun it's a fun thing to talk about. But like I think one thing that maybe people don't think about is it's like at the end of the day, it's like nothing really changes about you or like anything. It's like the next the next day you're back on set, you're back working. And it's like it's an exciting thing, but it's not something that's like boom, suddenly now it's like my whole life has changed or anything. It's just another little step in the progression of of everything. And
it's from a person put like this. I think when you win something like that, or you're in that arena, it's something that you're staying very humble for that, and that's a good thing, because when you hear Emmy, it doesn't matter if you know movies, if you've never seen TV shows. You hear it and automatically you associate it with like the highest level of something. You know what I mean?
It definitely is like a helpful thing. Like when you're interviewing for jobs, or you're kind of discussing projects and stuff. It definitely gives you like a little more credibility in that space for sure. But yeah, no, it's been an exciting journey, and yeah, there's like a big kind of a busier various other like feature projects, that are kind of getting off the ground right now.
Yeah, you were saying something about you're working on some documentaries and everything, right? What are those documentaries and projects you're working on now?
Yeah, so last year was the 80th anniversary of the Normandy landings on D-Day, 1944.
Yep.
So I've got a good friend of mine who I shot his movie, his first feature movie. He was a talent on the NFL show I shot several years ago. We stayed in contact, and we've worked on a couple things.
Okay.
But he was telling me that he wanted to make this documentary about World War II, and he wanted to go to the 80th anniversary. So we scrapped together a little team of myself, him, Nate Boyer is his name. He's a Green Beret veteran, so he served in Iraq, served in Afghanistan. But then he walked on to, after his time in service, he used his GI Bill. He went to the University of Texas, and he walked on the football team there as a long snapper.
Oh, nice.
And then he had a very brief stint, in the NFL with the Seahawks.
Okay.
But he is, so he's a great advocate of sports, and a great advocate of of the veteran community, and he runs a charity. It's called Merging Vets and Players, which essentially teams up veterans who have kind of lost their sense of purpose with retired athletes who have also feel like when they retire they've kind of lost their team as well.
That's great.
But he's also interested in a lot of kind of social justice type issues. He's most famous in kind of American pop culture because he wrote a letter to Colin Kaepernick, saying that when Colin Kaepernick first started doing the protest, he was standing or sitting, I think rather. Sorry.
Yeah.
But what Nate did was he wrote a letter saying, it's hey, as a military veteran, I think it would be more respectful if you kneel. And then I'll come on the stage, to the field with you. It's I personally won't, kneel, but I'll stand there, with my hand over my heart, and I'll support you that way because that's what America is all about. Yep. And the moment that Kaepernick, started kneeling, that's when it became this massive, political issue.
Yep.
So it's he has kind of his a little bit of interest in that story as well, and he's interested in telling more social justice issues, not just historical things or military stories. So we were talking about how to make a movie that kind of combines all of those things, and kind of this concept of what we're looking at right now is when you and I grew up, it's everyone knows someone who is a World War II veteran, someone's grandpa or their uncle or great grandpa or someone, and it's the reality of it is now all these guys are the youngest ones are 100 years old, and pretty soon there's going to be none of them left. So the 80th anniversary is kind of the last really big D-Day anniversary.
Yeah.
So it would be the last time that a lot of these guys would probably ever get to go there. And so we were fortunate enough to be able to meet with some of those veterans and spend some time with them over there, and then also in back in the States. So the kind of piece is it's a little bit of a history thing, but also a little bit of what does it mean for this event in in 2025. We're kind of in a world where it seems like conflict feels inevitable at some point in the future, and is it it's very dangerous to be in a world where no one has experienced warfare on that level anymore. I think forgetting how terrible World War II was at a human cost and just a total warfare cost. It's dangerous for society as a whole because it's you don't want to repeat something like that. You don't want to repeat it in China. You don't want to repeat it in Ukraine or in Europe. So so that's that project, and they've been.
When is that project? Are you done shooting it, or are you still shooting it now?
It's done shooting. Then Nate and the co-director Laura, who's a friend of mine, and then Alec is the name of the editor. So they're working on that, and they're kind of shopping it around, looking for a home for it.
Awesome.
So hopefully it'll go to some festivals, and then it'll get on streaming, and people will be able to see it.
There you go.
So I was working on that one, and then the past couple weeks, or 2 months ago or so, I was just out in Ukraine for another project. So So that was kind of a
You
crazy
gotta be careful,
experience.
man. You gotta be
Yeah, it's a
careful.
little sketchy there. Yeah, I went to this place called Dnipro.
Okay.
It's the fourth or fifth largest city in Ukraine. I think it's about 80 miles from the front, so it's pretty far down there. Um, and I went there with an American neurosurgeon,
Oh wow.
and he basically what he does is during his days off from working at a hospital in Texas. He's the head of the neurosurgery department there. He's
Okay.
traveled to Ukraine 3 or 4 times on his vacation time, and he assists the neurosurgeons out there. And this place, Mechnikov Hospital, is the largest hospital closest to the front. So they've seen about 45,000 patients
Yeah.
since the war began,
War, yep. That's crazy.
and just by the amount of experience that these guys have, because they just do it so often, it's like they're actually like world leaders in dealing with traumatic brain injury and doing neurosurgery on like trauma cases. So we went out there, we spent some time with those doctors, and kind of the reality of what it's like to live there, that close to the front. And
Yep.
probably going back there in a few weeks,
Okay.
early next year, just to shoot some more stuff. So yeah, working on that.
Yeah, man. I mean, like I said, I always give you kudos because, like I said, I've seen you grow from one. When you're basically a child, now you're a man, and you're doing different projects. You're all over the world. So, I just pray. I'll pray. Make sure you're safe. Make sure you continue to keep doing and keeping your skill set, keep growing in your style. It's a beautiful thing to see someone start, grow, and then keep progressing like you're doing. So keep it up. And like I said, I'm always just cautious. Being in the military, understanding the concepts that go into those types of realities, but then at the same time, being an artist, I see the value in these dangerous and difficult situations for it to be shown because we have to document these things so that we, like you said before, you avoid going back to certain problems that we've done in the past. And then during the instances, you need to see like the heroes that these people are doing, like you're saying, the neurosurgeons, the people that are helping on the ground. They have no bias or anything like that. They're just trying to help humanity. So that's a beautiful thing. I can't wait to see it.
No, no, definitely, and I think it's important that the world sees, like
Yeah.
I think the American media has kind of in a lot of ways moved on from Ukraine. I think the news cycle here is short. It wants to see things resolved quickly, and certainly like Donald Trump wants to see the conflict resolved quickly.
Yep.
But I think going there, it's not that simple.
Simple, yeah.
And
Yep.
for these people, it's like they're looking at a fight they think for their existence. And it's like they want their story to be told, and I don't think that the U.S. media reports on the severity of just attacks on civilians over there.
Yeah.
So like pretty much every day we were in Dnipro, there's air raids, you would hear explosions, and then a few days after we left, thankfully nothing too serious had happened while we were there.
Yep.
But a few days after we left, an apartment building got hit, and several people died and a few dozen people were injured, and so something like that just doesn't even make the news in the United States, but that's the reality. Is that kind of stuff happens there weekly, and it's just like and we met with civilians who were hit by drones like in their fields and stuff like that, where it's just like the indiscriminate shelling of the civilian population there is it's pretty horrible. So hoping to be able to kind of bring some of those stories to life, and obviously the heroism of the doctors that are working there, because it's like they really have no choice, but they're trying to do the best they can,
The
and
best they can.
they work with a lot less resources than the American military does.
Yeah, we're hoping that that gets resolved. So even with that, you've worked in a lot of different industries, you've worked with a lot of people. Where do you see yourself in the future, like the next 5 years? If someone were to say, Logan, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
I mean, hopefully just continuing down the path that I'm on. I'd love to just keep telling stories, and I'd love to do some more scripted work. I've done several feature films, but so I'd love to keep exploring in that space, and really just keep going.
Do you feel like you would want to go back to directing?
No, I don't think I have any desire to direct right now.
Okay. Okay.
I'm pretty happy shooting, and I think there's a little less stress, a little less responsibility over certain things, and um, certainly don't miss like trying to find money to shoot things.
Yeah.
I don't that element of it is
That's
always
awesome.
tricky, but
Okay.
yeah. Also, like I think if I wanted to direct something, I would have to be like really I'd have to feel very passionate about
Like a
like telling
passion
that
project.
story,
Yeah.
and like
Yep.
yeah, and like right now it's like I'm not sure what that would be. So
hmm Okay. Like I said earlier, I appreciate you being on the show. I thank you for, giving us some insight about your life. I love hearing stories of like progression. And then, like I said before, a lot of people, when they see people that have made either, accolades, celebrity, they don't really understand the groundwork that kind of builds up to that. And it takes some time, patience, perseverance and consistency. So I always give respect to people I've seen, people that I personally know, that I see the progression and where you guys are now. So I love to hear these stories, and I give you all your props. So the
well, thanks,
second
Eric.
the second section of this is just 5 questions that are more of like your personal life, because we've talked a little bit about your more professional life. And once again, I call it like the hot gun or shotgun questions, where
Mhm.
I get like a preference. And you let me know if you want to elaborate more. You can. It's not anything against it, or you can just, I like this versus that, and we'll move on. Okay.
Go for it.
All right. So I'm gonna start. Just something basic. Apple or Android?
I'm an Apple person,
There we go.
unfortunately.
I mean,
I
you know
feel
how like
like
technically, like a lot of people when they're technical with computers and cameras and designing, they tend to go more Android sometimes. So it's always.
I think for me it's like I just like the I feel like I like the Apple iOS, and
hmm
I
hmm
like an AirDrop things.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
I feel like AirDrop is like just like the most useful feature,
Yeah,
just to be able to move files like quickly. And then
yeah.
I like that you can like copy and paste stuff and like move it between your computer and your phone. So
And it is
I don't know,
seamless with if you have an Apple and a Mac, yeah, or you have a Mac and you
yeah.
have an iPhone.
Because I didn't have a Mac for a long time. I used to be like a Windows person. Like,
hmm
it's cheaper to get like an editing computer that's Windows.
Yeah, yeah,
But like maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, I finally caved on being like, all right, I'll get a MacBook, just so like when I travel, I'll have
yep,
something that I could color and pull stills off of. But it's like I just find that ecosystem just so nice, and so
yeah,
like
yeah.
just
I'm an
it
Apple
all
person
fits
too,
together.
so I have. So it's weird. It's like I have my designing stuff that I use a PC. I have
Mm.
an Apple. My son went to college, so I gave him my MacBook, and then I shoot all my stuff with my either my phone or a camera, and then I have a link where I'm getting a desktop, more of a desktop, so I can do some more designing. But it's interesting to know that. Um, Going into more of the I guess film, because I love comic books. I don't know if you like comic
Mm.
books, but are you more of a Marvel person or a DC person? And it can be something from a cinematographer's aspect. But which one do you think is more beneficial or more influential right now, Marvel or DC?
I feel like Marvel's had quite the run, right?
hmm
Um, and I mean, I think you can't like understate their cultural importance at all. And I think
Yep.
DC's also had kind of like a rough run at it, with their
Yeah.
Superman. And normally I would say like overall Marvel, but I would say that I feel like Marvel's quality is starting to slip.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's it's no longer synonymous with like this is a sure thing.
hmm
Um, I mean, would you consider like are Christopher Nolan's Batman movies considered DC?
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah. I mean, I
so it's
guess.
weird. It's like when they first started that whole Universal thing. DC has a lot more films prior with superheroes. So they have Superman, they have Batman. They consistently threw out Batman. Batman is like the Spider-Man of Marvel. But when Marvel started Iron Man and they made their cinematic universe, it was like DC was trying to like catch up to them. And now they had all those bumps in the road. They kind of started with the Snyderverse, and now James Gunn. I have some friends that have worked with James, so it's interesting to see where they are. But it's like no one has really seen their whole like library. DC is very vast with characters or stories, mythology, and how it intertwines with the more darker, grittier things in the comic book world. So I'm excited to see them. I'll always be a DC person, but it's good to see like where people's perspectives are, even from a visual storyteller like yourself. So
No, yeah, I feel like the Marvel stuff, unfortunately, has been like, I think it's synonymous now with like what people think is like wrong with modern filmmaking. um, right? Because it didn't like Martin Scorsese come out against Marvel like last year and stuff too.
it's, yeah.
But as I said, like, I mean, from a cinematography standpoint, I feel like the Batman, Christopher Nolan Batman movies are probably the best superhero movies ever made, and I feel like Matt Reeves' like new Batman was like visually very stunning too. Rick Frazier shot that, and he's one of the best in the business right now. Yeah. So I don't know. I would consider myself neutral on that one.
That's a good answer.
I think that I think they both have pros and cons, but I don't know. I wouldn't consider any of them a clear winner right now. I don't know.
Okay. Where do you think, from a cinematographer's perspective, Canon or Sony, better camera?
I mean, I gotta say, I feel like Sony is really cornering a lot of the market out here, from what I'm seeing. So it's like me, I'm a big ARRI guy. I own a couple ARRI cameras. Pretty much everything I shoot is on the the Alexa platform. But I think Sony is starting to kind of chip away at the cinema market out here. They've got a camera, the Venice 2, which is very popular on like commercial sets and feature films out here. That's actually the camera that I took to Ukraine, just because it has like incredible low light capabilities, and I wanted to use E-mount lenses, the Sony mount, so I could use smaller lenses than I could mount on the ARRI. But I think like where their really their lineup shines is they've got smaller cameras like the FX6 and the FX3, which like the FX3 famously was used on like Gareth Edwards' movie The Creator. So it's like I think you got to give it to at least on the cinematography side. I think Sony's the clear winner here. I don't really know too much about like what Canon's like. I think they have like That's a cool. C70 or something. I'm not sure.
I mean, a lot of people, everyone knows Canon, but like that's from like a consumer perspective versus like cinematographer. You're working with this hands-on. These cameras in depth. So I always like to pick your mind with when it comes to like when you see a visual, when you see something on TV or a movie, can you tell what it's been shot with at this point?
Not really, because I feel like it's like to the credit of all these cameras, it's like I think they're all about the same, like like the top end like Sony offering, top end Canon offerings, the Red, the Alexa, like with the right colorist and stuff, the pipeline, and they're all pretty interchangeable. I mean sometimes I think you could tell like if something is shot like on a Red. Sometimes you can kind of
it's like a big name.
See that
like if I can shoot on a Red.
It's because a Red has like a little bit of a look sometimes. It can be like the color is like maybe a little green or a little tinted, and like sometimes you can be like, was this shot Red? And then also like it's like if depending on what streaming platform it's on, right? Because like Netflix famously has like this like 4K mandate for their stuff, and for a long time the Alexa didn't shoot 4K, so if it was a Netflix shoot, then the number of cameras it would shoot on would be limited. But I don't know. I feel like hit or miss. Sometimes I can tell, sometimes I can't. But I think it's a testament to how good all these camera platforms
are getting. Yeah, they're all kind of like balancing out. Like, is this a preference of what like the platform or capabilities of the camera? Like, what makes you feel more like an ARRI person versus like a Sony person?
I think what's great about the ARRI is I think the ARRI just like you just have to do so little to the camera to get good results. And I think it's like if I don't have to be thinking about the camera and like how it's performing, then I can think about all the other things that I need to be focused on. So with some other cameras, it's like, sure, you can get the same results, I think, with them, but I think it takes like a little bit more work in color, or you need to be a little more cognizant of like, oh, is this window blowing out, or stuff like that. So I think really where the ARRI's the best is it has fantastic dynamic range, so like it can see very high into the shadows, it can see very high in the highlights as well.
Oh, nice.
And it's very difficult to like clip that camera.
Okay.
So I think that that's kind of the biggest benefit of it. And then also it's like I think that their color science is kind of unmatched. So it's like I think skin tones look good, and
With that,
I think
particular camera.
with that particular camera. So that's why I like the Airy personally,
Okay.
and just ergonomically, I like using it. I like how the way the buttons are lined up. Like sometimes the Sony, their menu system's a little confusing. It's a little deep. So once again, just from an ease of use standpoint, I want what's like fast and easy to use, and because I don't want to be thinking about like where stuff is in the menu and whatnot.
I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot of work when you see what everyone does on that scale of thing. That's why I said like a lot of people they see the end result of a movie or a TV show, but they don't know all those ins and outs of like you're saying, just comfortability with the camera, what lens can do what, how the light is gonna how you can utilize the light with particular cameras and depth of field. So there's a lot of different things that people don't know the technical pieces to it, that you would look at it and be like, I don't want to use that. I'd rather use that. I can't do that here. I can do that there. So it's a beautiful like chemistry of things to see that output, and then you're like, oh,
No, definitely, yeah, because they're all different tools for different jobs, and certain certain cameras will do certain things better. So it's like if you understand what each one can do best, then you can pick the best one for each project. If that's dictated by the format, do you want a large format or Super 35, or it's like is low light important on this job, or it's like, oh, we're going to be shooting outside at noon, so it's like the dynamic range is important so things don't blow out. Or it's like, oh, do we need slow-mo capabilities, because certain cameras can do better slow-mo than others. So I think that's part of the fun thing about being the DP is it's like you kind of know all that stuff, and then you kind of advise the director. It's
like,
hey,
this is what I can do.
Yeah, I think this is where we should go, or do this, and I think
Yeah.
it's kind of the fun part of the fun technical challenge of all of it.
That's awesome. Better director, going into like the director aspect. Better director, Cameron or Spielberg?
Ooh,
I have to give you one of the hard ones.
That's a hard one. I feel like I gotta go Spielberg.
Okay.
I mean, I think he's just got like such an iconic roster of films in his filmography. But I don't know. I mean, some of James Cameron's movies are also like some of my favorite. Ever. I think the deciding factor for me is I wish that James Cameron hasn't spent like the past 15 years on Avatar.
On Avatar.
Like I wish we could have seen him do something else.
Yeah.
But I would argue, I don't know, it's like, what has like Steven Spielberg done that's like super influential in the past 15 years either?
Yeah, I mean, the argument, you can't really lose with either one of them. Like, if you put money on
No. Yeah, they're both better filmmakers than me. So
yeah, I love that.
I mean, they're certainly both geniuses in their own right.
The last one is, I had to actually look this up a little bit more because this is a little bit more related to cinematographers. But who do you think is a better cinematographer, Roger Deakins or Michael Ballhaus?
I gotta go Roger Deakins. I mean, Roger Deakins is my favorite cinematographer. You could say any other DP, and I would say Roger Deakins. I think what Roger Deakins does, so well is I think like his films resonate with even people that aren't super familiar with cinematography. I think they can hone in on the fact that film looks good, which I feel like is a very unique characteristic, because he's not as showy as certain other cinematographers are. His work is very naturalistic. But it's like I really think it does resonate with people, and I think his philosophy, and certainly it's very influential on me. So
yeah, I guess in the scale of, at least from the sections that I saw, Roger Deakins is like the number one of all time. He's the highest of the cinematographers, well known, credibility.
I would say definitely like one of the few like celebrity DPs.
Okay, so I appreciate you once again. I love speaking to you and hearing how everything is. I can only hope that you keep doing what you're doing, keep progressing, I'll still, anything you need from me, let me know. Where can someone find you on social media if they're trying to contact you for jobs, they want to reach out to you and speak to you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, you could reach out to me on Instagram. It's just at Logan Fulton DP.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. All right, man. So I don't want to pick. I know you got a lot of stuff to do. I know you're running around. Like I said, I appreciate everything, and like I said, I'll be in touch. I'll definitely let you know about the show, and blessings and best of luck with everything, man.
No,
I'll be
thanks for
rooting for
having me,
you.
man. And
Yeah.
it's great to see you. You're continuing to work on your creative endeavors in the show, and obviously, thank you for your service. With what you're doing in the military now too.
Yeah.
And yeah, hell yeah, dude.
Thank you so much, Logan. We'll be in touch, and best of luck with everything. All right.
Awesome. Have a good night.
All right. Peace out.
Peace.